disclosures, with the proposed rules published originally back as far as 2012. These rules consisted of over 1,000 pages and several sample forms. Then, in late 2013, final rules were published that are coming into effect this October. So what exactly is happening on October 3rd? Well, if you haven't heard, that's the date we'll be moving from a 3-page RESPA-compliant HUD format to a new 5-page closing disclosure. This is the effect of the CFPB rule changes initially passed back in 2013, and they've used that time to make a simplified format that, while longer on paper, should be simpler for the consumer to understand. The changes that have been mandated are an early truth in lender and good faith estimate being consolidated into a single loan estimate form, and the final truth in lending statement and the current HUD-1 being pulled together into a single closing disclosure form. With these changes is going to come a lot of new terminology. New acronyms and new organizations will all need to be familiar with. I've already mentioned a couple of those as we went through the first couple of slides, but let's take a moment to go through them all and break down what they mean. You're already familiar with the RESPA, or Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act of 1974, and we've even touched now on the Truth in Lending Act's forms earlier in the presentation. The CFPB, or Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, was created as a result of the Dodd-Frank Act to handle integrating the TILA and RESPA forms under a new overarching rule. On October 3rd, 2015, the Know Before You Owe mortgage rule will be implemented and will replace the existing forms with 2 new forms: the loan estimate, provided 3 business days after application for a loan is submitted, and the closing disclosure, provided 3 days prior to closing. This new rule is called the TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure Rule, or TRID. Finally, there's MISMO. We've been hearing a lot about that one lately. MISMO is the Mortgage Industry Standards Maintenance Organization. Their standards are growing in popularity and will ensure consistency throughout a closing at a whole new level. MISMO creates, promotes, and maintains voluntary e-commerce procedures and standards for the real estate industry. These standards allow mortgage lenders, investors, borrowers, and others to exchange real estate finance-related information and e-mortgages efficiently and economically, with greater confidence in the security of the data, even if they are using different systems than they could have ever before. Increased transparency, ensured consistency, and universal standards all come as a result of the MISMO compliance. MISMO standards have become popular throughout the real estate industry, being accepted by major lending institutions and government agencies, including the CFPB, for their own electronic data exchanges. EasySoft's disclosure software already has a MISMO-compliant import and export function, but what does that entail? Well, for a software to be compliant, they must be able to generate and accept data files in accordance with MISMO standards, but they will also need to go through the MISMO certification program. MISMO certification means a vendor has been vetted by the organization and found to be in compliance with their current standards. That means the software is capable of producing and consuming MISMO-based files and transmitting them securely. We've been talking a lot about the organizations involved and the standards being set, but let's take a step back and take a closer look at the new forms themselves. The loan estimate will be created by the mortgage broker or lender who is responsible for the accuracy of the document. MISMO compliance will be important in making sure that this estimate is properly accounted for on the closing disclosure. The first of those disclosures, the buyer disclosure, will be the responsibility of either the settlement agent or the lender, and is the lender's job to maintain accuracy. And finally, the seller disclosure will be the settlement agent's job to produce. Once again, responsibility does fall on the lender to ensure that there are no discrepancies. That can sound intimidating, but if you consider that there is now an additional 3 days from the initial CD to the closing, CD standing for closing disclosure, and that this means there are fewer forms to go through and to guide the borrower through, this change might actually be turned in your favor. Of course, some other changes are also coming, including changes to the timing requirements, record retention, the definition of application, variances, itemization of charges, and the disclosure of broker compensation and discount points. One thing I've been hearing a lot is that some people aren't sure if they will be affected by this change. In fact, this is going to affect pretty much everyone who works with real estate transactions. Lenders, attorneys, brokers, settlement agents, and title companies will all be experiencing some changes, but that doesn't mean this has to be a scary transition. The important thing to know for your part of the job is when you'll be processing the HUD-1 that we're all familiar with and when you're going to be working on the new CDF, because the old HUD won't be discontinued, at least not for the immediate future. The CDF form will be the new primary, but in cases with home equity, revolving lines of credit, reverse mortgages, mobile homes, or other dwellings not attached to the land, and no interest second mortgages, you'll have to use the HUD-1 instead. Again, at least for now. With this new CDF program, an unprecedented level of precision will be needed to stay in compliance with TRID. There will be no margin for errors in estimating fees, collecting and providing information to the consumer, or data submitted to the lender. Fears of being out of compliance, possibly due to a lack of staff or just a lack of know-how, added to a belief that the title company will be better equipped to handle the closings, has started a trend among attorneys of outsourcing to those title companies to save time. However, this may not work out as well as they hope, and it can really cut into an attorney's profits without saving all that much time or making things any clearer and easier to do. When you outsource, you're relying on the title company to provide a certain level of quality service that cannot be guaranteed. Lack of control over the process leads to a loss of client trust and, eventually, the clients themselves. Even if you outsource to a title company that can consistently follow through, you're still facing profits flying out the door. Your client is trusting you to help shepherd them through one of the most important changes and the biggest financial commitments that they're ever going to make. Your client probably does not want you to outsource to even the most reliable and respectable stranger when they know that you can do it yourself. This can lose their faith in you and make them feel like they're not important to you or your firm, which of course isn't what you want them to feel. Clients are important to you, and client abandonment can be a real problem and a real possibility when you outsource, especially when something goes wrong because of the work of that faceless third party that they've never met. But that really does sound like we're just talking about a slipshod organization that can't get the job done. Let's say you know without any doubt that the title company you're going to outsource the work to will not let you down, that everything that they do will be up to your standards. You're still looking at a cost to handle this outsourcing. A good size cost too, $450 on average. That's all profit from the closing that you hand over to the title company, even though you still have to review the finalized documents and work directly with the client throughout the process. You're still doing most of the work, but now you're also paying others. With all that in mind, right now is the perfect time to bring the closings in-house. The risk of outsourcing is too high with the increased compliance requirements, and the only way you can ensure the quality of that the quality lives up to your standards is if you manage the closing yourself. With the new forms and documents becoming much more straightforward and easy to manage, now is the time to take full control of your closing. Let your EasySoft software help you bypass a potentially costly middleman for all future closings. So let's talk a little bit about EasyCDF. EasyCDF was designed with 100% TRID compliance as our top priority, with built-in safeguards in place to help ensure data accuracy. The real estate closing process, automated with EasyCDF, improves your productivity, reducing your closing time by as much as 80%. And the new Real Estate Suite comes with EasyHUD as well. This helps you handle those special situations that still call for the HUD 1. By now, many of you have already downloaded EasyCDF after updating your EasyHUD software. If you have an active HUD license and you haven't seen the update prompts yet, you should next time you open up the EasyHUD. Don't worry about this download. EasyHUD and EasyCDF are completely separate programs, and one will not overwrite the other. To finish off this presentation, I'd like to go into a little bit more detail about the new software and help you become familiar with it, and then showcase it itself. EasyCDF is a complete real estate closing software solution made for small firms and solo practitioners, and built to help you get through the closing step by step with 100% compliance and without hiring additional staff. It really is as easy as filling in the blanks. First, you'll need to generate your RESPA-compliant HUD or TILA-compliant CDF. Then move on to the case data, storing a comprehensive catalog of information on the case that can be used to look up information later on buyers, sellers, lenders, etc., or automatically entered into a host of real estate documents that can be generated and filled out quickly and efficiently. This automation ensures that these documents are generated error-free every time and can be applied to your own library of forms very easily. Your closing is being finalized and the documents have been sent out. So what's the next step? Balancing the ledger and sending out checks. EasySoft supports this through both the EasyCDF and EasyHUD programs, and the ledger function will help make sure that everything comes out correctly every time. Finally, move on to the 1099 filing page that lets you file as you go, rather than rushing it all in at the end of the fiscal year. Before I move on to showing you the EasyCDF program itself, I'm going to show you a few other resources that can be a big help in making the October change a little bit less painful. The web addresses on this page, consumerfinance.gov, cfpbmonitor.org, nationalmortgagenews.com, and mortgagecompliancemagazine.com, are all great resources. These websites are also available on our website, so if you don't have a chance to copy them down now, don't worry about it. You can look them up on our site, www.easysoft-usa.com as well. Also on our website, you can check out recordings of our previous webinars that go into detail on several of these subjects. You may also check out our blog for regularly released articles with all the latest information. There's also a support portal to help answer any questions you might have about the different software that you own or any that you're interested in purchasing. Now you're ready for the upcoming 2015 closing disclosure changes. If you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'll switch over to the CDF and we'll go through a quick demonstration of that program. You should get a prompt the next time you log into the HUD program to download this EasyCDF program. If you haven't had a chance to look at it already, let me show you some of the basics. The closing disclosure program, I should say, consists of a closing disclosure section with all 5 pages, a ledger section, 1099s, and case data and real estate documents. We don't have any training videos available yet, but our technical support staff will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have about the program, and we should be releasing some training material soon. One thing you may notice if you've downloaded this program in the past is that there's a new button here at the top of the page. This was added as recently as this week, and this is our MISMO compliant button. This is where you will import data from a source, lender, yourself, wherever you might need to get it, in the appropriate format. Let me see if I can get one in right now for you. Sorry, I'm trying to find a file, and I inadvertently grabbed one of our old ones that's from an older version of the compliance. I'll have to demonstrate that some other time. Again, if you can contact our technical support department if you have any questions about that. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and go through this closing disclosure fresh. We'll start by putting in some basic information. I'm not going to fill out the whole thing because I don't want to keep you here for too long, but I do want to show you some of the basics. So the first thing I would do, obviously, is bring in my borrower, seller, and lender information. My own settlement agent information will normally pre-fill. So I want to add a new borrower. I can choose to type in a name, an address, and all that information. But let's say with the seller, I already have that information on file. When I go in and hit New, I can choose to bring in from an existing selection of contacts. And unfortunately, I don't have any yet. I will soon. But since this is a new copy of the program, it's going to need to start from scratch. That's easy enough to do. You enter all that information into what is essentially a Rolodex under Tools, Case Management. In here, you can add all kinds of contacts, clients, lenders, government offices, anybody that you might need to contact, and more importantly, anybody whose information might need to be transferred to your forms. Once it's entered here, let's put in EasySoft. Okay, I think that would be sufficient information for now. We'll make them a lender. Once my information is entered in here, I can see it in my Rolodex whenever I need to. And more importantly, when I'm on the form itself and I add somebody new, there's EasySoft right there. Let's bring that lender in. Okay, and any information that I have on hand about them will fill in these sections. Right. Now, again, I didn't have a lot of information, so you don't see it here unless you click this button, because normally lender will only show their name. But you can access all of this information, and it will be stored in your case data. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. First, I want to scroll down a little ways and show you something about the loan terms and then the projected payments. Loan terms is a new section that checks against the loan terms to see if anything has changed or can change after the closing, depending on where it's located. If I put in a loan amount and say that it can change, then I need to give some explanation, and this question mark explains what that means. In this case, it means I need to add some bullet points with some explanation, just what that loan amount is about, why it can change after the closing. So this is where I would add the explanation. And you may have noticed that the question mark said I can also make it bold. To do that, I simply right-click, choose bold. Hang on a moment, sorry. Right-click, choose bold. And you can see I'm typing in now in bold. And finally, down here on projected payments, this is where I have a payment calculation system. I can set it up so that there's a few payments, or I can set it up with just the one. If I want to add new payments or subtract them as I'm trying to work out the best system or the best setup, that's very easy. I just add or delete the columns as I go. Everything is totaled here at the bottom in cost at closing. Then on page 2, I start putting in the nitty-gritty. This is almost all this page is just itemizing everything that used to be compressed into a few lines on the HUD. So there's a lot more options here, and we've included some drop-downs to make it a little bit quicker to go through, but sometimes you'll need to type in things. Now, to keep everything organized, our system includes a feature that automatically alphabetizes the line when you're done with it. So you can see I typed in aardvark because it's the first thing in the dictionary, and it jumped ahead of application fee. This makes sure that everything's more or less organized for you if you have to go back and make an adjustment later, rather than having to search through potentially dozens of lines. And then, again, the drop-downs provide specific examples common to that section so that you can fill in the information as you go and get everything taken care of. And again, as you can see, it's reorganizing appropriately. When I reach section D, it gives me a breakdown, total loan costs up to that point, and shows your subtotals for before and at closing. That's something I really like about this page. The borrower and seller sections are organized into before and at closing. It's a lot more straightforward for the borrower than, say, the POC, HUD, GFE, the terms that they didn't really understand. Right. And then, like I said, just continue down the page and everything. It's pretty much the same the whole way down. There's a tax table near the middle. It's the same thing you're experienced with on the HUD. And then at the very bottom, everything is totaled up, including the other column at the end. That helps you keep track of all the costs. Page 3, you'll have a loan estimate usually brought in through that MISMO import. The loan estimate will populate here, and our system will be calculating what the final loan amount is. Total closing costs, deposits, funds for borrower, all of these things will calculate up here, and it will automatically detect if there's a discrepancy. If there is, this change will change from no to yes, and you will need, again, to type in an explanation using the bullet point system. And again, that's bullet points or bold, or both. One thing I've had several questions on from people who are starting to take a look at this is, I'm looking at page 3 examples, and it has the totals at the bottom. Where are the totals at the bottom? Because the EasySoft page 3 doesn't total them at the bottom. That's because we felt like it was excessive. You're seeing the same information in multiple places, and we didn't want it to become confusing. So instead, we've let the totals in their original location at the top of each section. So total from K, due from borrower closing, is right here, and the total that would be right below it at the bottom of the page is L, paid already by or on behalf of the borrower. Okay, and the same holds true for the seller side. Pages 4 and 5 are mostly question and answer sort of things, check boxes that you need to fill in based on the situation. So for these, it's just a matter of going through and checking off the appropriate boxes, and then at the bottom, filling out anything that needs to be filled out here. Some of this will be pre-filling from your loan estimate. At the very bottom, if there's adjustable payments or adjustable interest rates, check the box to activate that section, and you can fill that in as well. And again, like I said, page 5, pretty much more of the same, more check boxes and filling in. But at the end of this is contact information. Again, I can bring in information from that digital Rolodex by clicking on the little head and choosing somebody from my contacts. And that'll fill in here. You can choose mortgage brokers, real estate brokers, whatever needs to be filled in for who gets these copies. Okay. If you need a signature addendum, check the box here. And that's about it for the 5-page itself. I can answer some more detailed questions on that after the presentation. But for now, I'm going to quickly jump and show you the other features that are included in all copies of CDF. The ledger, very similar to the ledger we've already got. It's going to bring in information. You can see it's already brought in a little bit of that information, the $110 that I typed in right there at the very start. It's going to bring it in and try and make sure everything is kept balanced, and it'll let you know if there's a problem with the difference. Here you can split and combine checks, print checks using our internal system, and add any necessary transactions that weren't included on the 5-page. You can also delete transactions if they shouldn't have been there for one reason or another. The 1099 section will let you fill out and submit 1099s electronically. If you haven't done so already with your HUD, you can use the electronic filing service enrollment form to enroll. It is free to enroll, but it is $10 per submission. And then finally, I mentioned earlier that the case data is the end point where all of the data goes to. So all of the contact information, important dates, things like that will populate here. And then you can enter more information that might not have even come from the CDF, but might be something you want to have on file. So some information, like the borrower's name that I typed in earlier, is populated here. Same as the EasySoft information. There's our phone number. Again, there was no contact name given. We can add that. My name is Vincent Har, so I'll put my name there. All right. That information then carries over to the real estate documents, which, if you're familiar with this from your HUD program, works almost exactly the same way. It'll just have more documents as time goes by. A real estate document is any document related to the real estate fields that you might want to set up for pre-filling to save you time. You can import as many of your own documents as you like using the rich text format. And that's about it for the CDF program. That was a very quick run through, and like I said, we are working on a training video which goes in more depth and has a full disclosure for demonstration purposes. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and try and open up a little bit for questions.